1080 is more for gaming, and especially if you do 60, you don't need 60 frames per second. You don't need 30. Nobody's going to even notice the difference.
Okay.
Yay.
Yeah. Well, we haven't had one in a week, so it's about time for that. Thank you, tech gods. Okay, so I don't know how much you got about the Göbekli Tepe archaeologist, but he will be with us tomorrow. That's at 3:30, not 8 like normal, and we'll be finding out the implications of what that means for humanity and going through what they're finding. All right, so tonight we're going to be discussing is the reason to believe in God, and I believe we're going to let Jeff start us out by telling us why he thinks that there is, and then him and Tom are going to have sort of a fluid back and forth conversation. Steve and I will make sure that it stays on track. Other than that, it will be a conversation between Tom and Jeff, and at the end we will, if we have anything to add, we can do that at the very end, as well as read your super chats and any questions that you may have. So Jeff, whenever you're ready, it's over to you.
I'm ready. I didn't know that was the title of the show tonight. Is there a reason? Because I hold the specific position that there is no reason to believe in a God. In fact, I hold the opposite, that reason should not lead to the existence of a Christian God. I mean, when I talk about God, I'm talking about Christian God. Obviously, I'll just leave it hereafter. I sort of hold a position, pretty strongly, that science and human intellectual endeavors of any sort will not lead to any evidence for God of any sort. I think the whole atheism-theism debate is off track. I think that the only evidence there is for God is faith. Now, you're going to say that's not evidence. That's fine. Nope, I got you. The Hebrews 11:1 and certain translations of the Bible, such as King James, NLT, say that faith is evidence of the unseen. That's, of course, a very open statement. What is the unseen? Presumably it would mean supernatural realms that are discussed in the Bible to keep, on the Bible's universe of discourse. But faith should be a different sort of information that is only experienceable, and the Bible is very clear in saying we will not find any trace of it in the world. There's a verse in Isaiah that says God hides himself. Very well-known medieval Byzantine monk Maximus the Confessor is known for writing about how God leaves no trace of himself visible in nature. We walk by faith, not by sight. 2 Corinthians 5:7. That's very clear right there. I think I was listening to a lecture by Boghossian the other day. I mean, I know you guys are very familiar with him.
Sure.
Yeah, he's I like his stuff. Yeah, he's using the definition of faith that I think is non-biblical. Now, most Christians do the same thing. I don't know why nobody can just go in the Bible and look at what the Bible says faith is. But man, I'll tell you, you watch somebody like Boghossian, or take one of the biggest pastors in America, John Piper. He can't even take the time to just open the Bible and look at what the definition of faith is. What the Bible says faith is constant communion and constant communion with and experience of God, Christ. And that's very clear. You can pull up all the verses that describe faith will come to that. Now, the problem is people think that faith equals belief, which is the belief is a subset of faith. So people start taking all the belief verses and saying those are about faith, and they come up with a definition of faith that doesn't match where faith is referred to in the Bible. So anyway, to get to the point here, I hold the position that there's definitely no reason at all, scientific or logical, intellectual of any sort, for the existence of God. It's only an experience. The Bible is very consistent on that point, in my opinion. The key verse there would be, we walk by faith, not by sight. Maybe the other key verse would be Hebrews 11:1. Faith is the evidence of the unseen. And there's other verses. We don't see what is visible and passing away. We see what is eternal and not passing away. Sort of saying the same thing as Hebrews 11:1. And that is right there. There should be no atheist-theist debate which discusses scientific or logical or intellectual evidence for God, we won't find it. So all the Christians that come on your show and say they want to have all this apologetical information for the existence of God, blah, 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 they're not following the Bible. And atheists who, I was on Aaron Ra's show about 3 months ago, just his channel, great show when I was on there. You know, and he sort of knew what I was talking about here, but we had to kind of go back and forth for a second and kind of get, there's sort of the definition, to kind of get acclimated to this idea that there's the definition of faith that people talk about, which just means to believe without evidence. Okay, that's generally, Christians will throw some other things in there, like, you know, we trust completely, trust God, blah, blah, blah. But in general, it doesn't have anything to do with the biblical definition of faith. The Bible in itself has its own definition. It's either going to be a contradiction or it's going to be consistent. I agree it's consistent.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Sure. Maybe it was a misunderstanding on my part then. So what are you here to, like, what are you and Tom here to sort of disagree on?
Oh,
if it's not the reason. Tom?
That maybe that, I don't know. I had a couple other things to go over, but there's one right there. That there's no.
Yes, I'm going to say, why should we trust our experiences? That would be a reason. When I say there is no reason to believe in God, I mean absolutely no reason, including your personal experience. So your personal experience is not a justifiable reason to believe in a God. So I'm rejecting his argument that personal experience is justifiable to believe in a God.
Got it.
So why should we believe our personal experience?
Do you believe that I'm here right now?
Yes.
Okay, what if you have a vision, something not accessible to me, accessible to you, only first person, of something that gives you the same epistemological experience that tells you it is real, just like you believe I'm real right now? If I say that doesn't exist, it sounds like I'm. Go ahead.
I can't have, I'm not sure what you mean by epistemological experience, but I can't have an experience of things that don't have an empirical basis that will convince me that they exist. So like, for example, if I saw a unicorn, I would not be convinced the unicorn exists. In order to justify the existence of the unicorns, I would need to be able to independently verify it with some kind of empirical test. But if I said, like, if I saw a dog, I would believe that the dog exists because there is already an implicit empirical basis for dogs. Like, we've done many tests in the past with dogs. Dogs have made many testable predictions that we can scientifically verify: the taxonomy, phylogeny, genetic makeup, chemical composition, bone structure, all kinds of things. And so anything that has an implicit empirical basis, I will believe purely based off experience because of the combination of that experience with the implicit empirical basis. But if it doesn't, then no experience I have is going to justify it.
Hang on, you can't talk over each other. Let him finish.
My mistake. Sorry. Go ahead.
So if things don't have an implicit empirical basis, then I will not believe it based on experience. Experience is not enough. So that would mean miracles, magic, mythical creatures, the paranormal, supernatural, UFOs. Until those have an empirical basis, I'm going to reject them regardless of my experience.
How do you know, though, that these experiences have priority over these other ones? And just because you have a more predominant set of experiences, you call empirical, and you believe that they're external to you, why would, say you had a vision tonight of an angel and it would appear just as real as I do now, why would that one suddenly, I know you're going to say because you don't have as much repeated exposure through time, so inductively it's going to be weaker to say that exists. But I'm still wondering, if I see, for example, a certain kind of tree for the first time, I'm not going to say, well, I haven't seen that before, so therefore it's less real than these sycamore trees I've seen 1,000 times before in my life.
Right. So I'd say that if it's something like, if you see something made of wood, I mean, we've seen lots of things made of wood. So if you see a natural thing that's just purely made of matter, like a horse or a tree or a table, those are perfectly reasonable to believe. It's not reasonable to believe things that have no basis that we can demonstrate in reality based on science. So I'm not just talking about experience here. I'm talking about future testable predictions.
There are things that we're not aware of.
Yes.
I think there's a delay. I'm sorry. Sorry. Go ahead. I'll try not to interrupt. There's a delay, I think.
So in my starting point is that there is some difference between my imagination and my experience. When I imagine a unicorn in my head, I do not see a unicorn in front of me. Like, I don't experience one. So we need some kind of methodology to differentiate between the imaginary things and the things we experience. So, for example, if we see a cup fall over on the table, there are infinitely many ways to explain how the cup fell over. Maybe it was the wind, maybe it was a squirrel, a mouse, a bird, maybe it was psychic powers or magic or an asteroid or aliens or God. It could be infinitely many things we can make up to explain why this cup fell over. Now, all of those except one are imaginary. They're made up. They're not true. There's only one, presumably, that's true. So we need some kind of methodology to differentiate between the imaginary things, the imaginary possibilities, and the real possibilities, or what we have justifiable reason to believe caused the event. Now, this applies to personal experience just like it does the fallen cup. We have some personal experience of an angel. There are infinitely many ways to explain that. Maybe it was aliens messing with your head. Maybe it was a delusion. Maybe it was an epileptic seizure. There are infinitely many ways to explain it, so we need some kind of methodology to filter out the imaginary ones and only leave the ones that are justifiable to believe. Now, the methodology I use is science, which is future testable predictions. If you have an explanation and it can project into the future to predict something we don't yet know and can be verified to be correct, then we have reason to believe that explanation is the real one and not one of the imaginary ones. Now, if you don't have some methodology, and it doesn't need to be science, if you have sufficient methodology of some other kind, that would be fine too. But if you don't have some way to filter out the imaginary ones, then there's no difference between your personal experience and just any delusion or illusion or any of the other infinitely many imaginary ways to explain this event. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Now, how do you know that I got a couple questions. Let me go with this one first. Is it possible there is a stream of information that exists for us to experience that is not empirical? The dream is the dream we were talking about a second ago. Now we're all probably the status quo position. I would think is going to be it doesn't have a referent. It doesn't denote anything. Fine, but it is nevertheless at least a mind-dependent stream of information. Now, is it possible there is a stream of information that exists about a world that is not the immediately observable empirical world we've all experienced since we've been born? Is that possible? I'm not saying have we seen it. Is it possible? Or is it a contradiction?
Well, if you ask if it's possible, my usual answer is just going to be yes, anything is possible. But I'm not quite sure what exactly you mean by that. That was a strange combination of words.
What I think I'm hearing you say is the only information I have is I've got it. Okay, my life is a set of experiences from first the ones I can remember till now. I have a certain category of them I call empirical, where I believe, I hope, I have faith in the Bogosian sense of the word that they exist outside of me. I can't prove that, but I believe they do. Other ones I believe just exist inside me, meaning inside my consciousness. The one you said a minute ago that the unicorn is not going to be outside your consciousness, and I'm saying, what if somebody discovered a unicorn in a forest? What if there was a horse that had a horn? I mean, we're going to say, we're in Siberia or somewhere where people haven't been. There was a monkey that was discovered in Africa. It's called the billy ape, I believe. 6 foot high. Chimpanzee looking thing that lives in trees. And before it existed, before it was discovered by Western science, anthropologists would go in and talk to the locals. They say, it's a big Bigfoot looking thing up in the trees, and you just don't see it, but they're there. And anthropologists thought they were all crazy. And then they were discovered. And now it's just a scientific phenomenon. So what I'm hearing you say, it almost sounds like the billy ape would have been a conspiracy theory or a dream or some kind of information that's to be rejected just because we have this presumption that it might not be empirical. And I don't know if it's how do we admit new information into the system that you're describing? New empirical information, or if there's a different kind of information, like mathematics is a type of experience, but I see, if I write 2 + 2 = 4 on the page, I can see ink and paper and stuff, but the operations that these do would seem to be a mental thing, that the 2 has this meaning, the plus has a meaning, the 2 has equal 4. That sort of experience seems to sort of stray from being empirical. It would possibly. Anyway, so.
All right, so yeah, I would agree there's 2 kinds of evidence here. One is conceptual, meaning stuff in our head, which would be math and logic and intuition and personal experience. Those kinds of things are conceptual. I would call them conceptual evidence. And then there's the empirical kind, which is the testable, repeatable, falsifiable, future testable prediction stuff. If we discover those kinds of facts, the kinds that can be testable, repeatable, falsifiable, make future predictions, like the example you gave of the people discovering the monkey, if we only have the conceptual evidence of the testimony of the people, then we should reject it. We don't have an empirical basis for the monkeys yet. And so we can say it's probably only illusory because we only have enough evidence, the conceptual testimony, to justify the conceptual conclusion that it's illusory. And then once we discover the empirical evidence of like the fur, the genetics, the some kind of like bones, those kinds of things, we can actually interact with one, then we have empirical evidence. So now it's justifiable to believe that it actually exists as a part of the empirical world.
Okay, what if the ape was, what if they said there's a horse with a horn? Same
It's
deal?
still, if it's just their conceptual testimony, it's not sufficient.
Right.
We have to actually have empirical stuff to verify it.
Now, you say conceptual information. I mean, math is repeatable. Every time I do 2 + 2 = 4, my mind spits out, sorry, every time I do 2 and 2, my mind spits out 4. That repeats just
It's got to
like
be able to make
empirical.
future. Sorry about that. Sorry about interrupting. It's got to be able to make future predictions in the world. So those things, those are purely in our head. You can't like discover a 2 somewhere hiding behind a rock. You're never going to discover physical
I
numbers
just found
somewhere
one
in the world.
float by. Bad joke.
Oh God, that's pretty good. Capture it quick. Get a Nobel
Yeah.
Prize. Yeah. So math and logic and a priori knowledge, which are true, independent of the external world. That's all conceptual stuff. That's in our head.
Yeah, I'll agree. That's all fair. So I guess what I'm trying to get at is, let me just see what you think. Why can't I say that there is a stream of information, call it revelation, faith, that is accessible to anybody, and it's not found in the empirical stream of information? I've got different streams of information in my consciousness: empirical, conceptual. I like that idea. I've heard you talk about that before. There's dream information, blah blah blah. There's one type of information, call it faith, which is only accessible by having experience of something that's outside of the physical domain. What's wrong with that?
There's nothing wrong with that. I'm totally okay with the idea of supernatural realms and other realms of all kinds of things, but you have to be able to you need some methodology to differentiate these things from just imaginary things, because it could be, like I said with the example of the cup, there are infinitely many ways to explain anything. And so why is your explanation any different from those infinitely many of other things that also have no way to differentiate them from the other imaginary things? So you'd have to have some way to show that your explanation is not just imaginary, like those other infinitely many imaginary things.
I don't. To you, it would be information that I would have to say is, you could go and do the same exercises I've done to have it, but you're just going to have to say, well, okay, I trust you. That's sort of a testimony, testimonial information, which is worthless, right? So
that would be if you have some kind of steps that we can take to have some kind of experience that is reliable and anybody can have that. That's a future testable prediction. That works. That qualifies as empirical evidence.
That's interesting. I never thought about that before, actually. Well, there's a certain kind of prayer where if someone believes in a God and talks to it and says certain things, such as, I want you to own my life, and I don't want it. I want myself to be destroyed and be recreated with you possessing it. And the person I'm talking about is Christ, Jesus. And you have to do it. You can't do it not believing. You have to actually believe, even if you just suspend your disbelief for a moment, and just play along, sort of thing. Really talk to it. I would bet you, this is I'm just kind of thinking this through right now. This is very interesting. I would predict if you had a group of 10 people, or 20 people or something, I could give them instructions exactly how to do this. And we'd have to trust that the intentionality of their consciousness was such that they were focusing on believing something supernatural, a creator existed, that I would be able to predict to you that I would see let's get a time frame within 1 minute to a year. A certain number of those people will come to you reporting that they've had spiritual revelations of Jesus, and their behavior set will completely change. And even people, you could take, you could report certain kinds of changes. Now, I'm not saying we do this, and you've all heard this kind of stuff before, but the thing is, though, is I don't see why I can't just make the claim that I have an experience of something that you don't. Because if you come into me and say, you don't have any evidence for it, Jeff, it doesn't exist, I'm going to say that's a fallacy of ignorance. You're saying I don't have evidence of X, therefore X doesn't exist. I'm just going to say, I do have evidence of X, and I think what you just said is an informal fallacy of ignorance.
Right. So you said there's this methodology, and you said it's accessible to anyone. And I know that I and many people who have genuinely sought a relationship with a God thing have tried this. I don't know if we've tried your particular prayer version, but we have tried this and have had no results. So doesn't that disconfirm your theory, since we have done essentially with absolute genuine intentions trying to communicate with this God and getting nothing in return even after many years? Doesn't that refute your position?
I have to think about it. Possible. But the prayer would be where you have to be. Most people, in my opinion, most Christians when they're praying are just talking to themselves. Just like in the Bible, a lot of people are always like, Christians are such a joke, and I'm like, that's how they were in the Bible. The God believers, the church people are the ones that killed Jesus. If you believe all that story. They're still a joke now. All hypocrites. I mean, that's just how it goes with humanity. Any human institution is going to have ugliness, and the church is definitely on the top of the list, as we all know. So nothing's changed over thousands of years. Now, the idea, though, that it should be the case that I tell you to do a certain prayer where you have to believe you're actually talking to God. You have to literally take your eyes and look up and believe he's there and talk and say, hey, Creator, I hate this universe you created because everybody's in pain, and why did you create an invisible universe? Why'd you create a universe where you're invisible? That's stupid. Makes no sense. I don't understand anything in the Bible. You give the sixth commandment and say don't kill, and everybody's killing everybody in the Bible, and you're causing a lot of these killings. I don't get any of it. And if you actually talk to it and say, I want you to show yourself to me, I believe that I could write this up, do the experiment, and it would happen. Now I haven't done it, so I don't have anything to show you other than a theory, which you can just reject, and almost wouldn't blame you if you did. That's what happened to me. That's what I've seen it happen to others. It should happen, but I haven't done the test yet.
Hold on one second. Dave.
Yeah, what am I hearing?
Dave, you weren't muted there, buddy. Okay. Okay.
All right.
Go ahead. Yeah. Oh, okay. Just us. Got it.
Yeah, we heard him. He did. Yeah.
Cool.
All right. Yeah. So, Jeff, that would be an interesting experiment. So, Jeff, that would be an interesting experiment. And if you could test that with people, I think you may find out that it doesn't quite work out the way you would expect, because the test has been done quite a bunch of times by many different people all across the world, especially by atheists. Atheists have, like myself, have pursued a genuine relationship, and it hasn't really worked out that well, especially in quite desperate situations for many people across the world. But I also wanted to comment on the second thing you said, where you said that...
First of all, I want to say I agree with you, and I just want to, before you cut in, so go ahead, though.
So you said that, why can't I say that you have some experience that I don't, and that justifies belief in a God? So I would say that it's not the fact that you have this experience and I don't have this experience. If either of us have this experience, we still have to address that problem that I presented earlier, where this could just be imaginary and we need to justify to ourselves, how do we differentiate this from the imaginary? And if we can't do that, and there's no difference between this and other imaginary things, then we can't justify to ourselves that we should believe this. So it's not just that you have an experience that I don't, it's that epistemologically, if you don't have a way to differentiate this experience from imaginary things, then you don't have justification to believe that it's actually a God.
If I go see a unicorn in the forest and I say, Tom, I saw a unicorn in the forest, you're going to say what you just said, but you'd be wrong. Let's say I really did. There was a unicorn that, like the Billy ape, there's a horned horse that's about to be discovered. A little horn or something in Siberia or whatever. According to what you just said, I would be correct, but you would be, the philosophical system you're giving would say I'm not correct, but would be in error.
Yes, it's possible that there is a God, and it's possible that you did discover it. But if there's no epistemological means, like there's no way to know that it's any different from in the infinitely many imaginary things, then you don't have any justification, like epistemic justification, to believe that it was actually a God.
I saw the unicorn. Say I did. Say I saw go Billy Apes.
Right.
Forget the unicorns. Say I'm one of the locals in Zaire. There is a Bigfoot living in the tree. And all the anthropologists are like, yeah, these locals are crazy. And then they see it. According to what you're saying,
your personal experience is not enough. You need to have empirical, testable evidence
to show
you need
what?
to be able to, like the DNA samples. You need to have testable future predictions.
What do
You
I
say,
need
well,
that-
you
what do I
can
need that
discover it in
data
this
for?
location at this time. And anybody can discover it. And you can do DNA samples. You'll get these results. You can find bones that match these sizes with these characteristics of this genus. So you need to have the future predictions. Your personal experience is not enough.
The Christian God isn't that way, though. You will never have empirical data for anything that shows. That's why nobody's come up. Well, I mean, that's why I think nobody's come up with anything yet. I mean, all the ontological argument, cosmological argument, all those logical things as well, they don't do the job. We all know it, right?
Right. So
likewise, no science does either.
So I use the empirical method because, like I said, you have to have some way to differentiate your experience from the imaginary, the infinitely many imaginary ways to explain what this experience caused this experience.
But
I use the empirical method. You don't need to. Like, that's just my choice. If you have a different method that works and can differentiate it, that's great. But I don't know what that is. But you need some way to differentiate.
I thought you were going at that empirical method is just your choice. Now, I think it's a good choice. I'm an empiricist about the world. If I want to learn about the world, I'm going with empiricism. I'm not going with a bunch of other whatever, a bunch of crazy theories or something. I'm trusting my eyes. That's it. Now, but something outside of nature wouldn't make any sense for, because it would be non-empirical. But if there is something outside of nature that I experience, which there's no absurdity there in my opinion, it's a possibility, like you're saying. I wouldn't want to be coming at you saying, Tom, I've got empirical information for this non-empirical thing, which would be a contradiction and an absurdity. So I don't see why I have to present evidence for something that exists outside of nature. God, in the Bible, it says God is in the world, but not of the world. It's like there's two realms that coincide, the supernatural and the natural. Our senses see the natural, not the supernatural. So I don't see why.
So I disagree with you a little bit right there. So I disagree with you a little bit right there. The supernatural can be empirical. There's nothing contradictory there. For example, if I pray to a God, God gives me a gold brick that materializes in front of me every time. Supernatural is an empirical. We've done a testable predictions. We have reason to believe in the supernatural. So the supernatural can actually be empirical. There's no problem with that. There's no contradiction in that in my worldview. But no matter what, you have this experience. And in epistemology, the first problem you have to overcome is what justification do you have to believe this is true? The fact that it's an experience isn't a justification in and of itself. You need more than that. You need to differentiate your experience from.
Well, I mean,
remember,
if I'm walking through the forest and I have I all of a sudden see a gold ball, metal ball or something, and I've never seen this before. What's this doing here? I've walked through the forest 1,000 times before, where I go walking, and all of a sudden there's a gold ball here. I'm not going to think that, it appeared out of nothing or something. I'm going to think there's some cause. But the point is that since it's a brand new experience, it sounds like what you're saying I have to say is I have to not trust my senses and think that it's imaginary. Am I wrong on that?
Sort of. So gold has an implicit empirical basis. We have lots of gold, so seeing a gold ball wouldn't necessarily be too extreme. But if you saw a supernatural being, like anything that doesn't have an empirical basis, the miracles, magic, mythical creatures, the paranormal, the supernatural, the UFOs, if you encountered any of those in the forest, you should always reject your senses 100% of the time until you can provide empirical testable predictions or some other criteria. If you have a different criteria that you can use that can differentiate it from imaginary, that's fine too. But if you don't, then it's not reasonable to believe it actually was there.
I think that's your preference, but I don't think that you're showing me why you choose one over the other. When I became a Christian, I saw an angel, a winged angel, had a white robe. White has an empirical basis. Wings have an empirical basis. They're winged female angels are talked about in Zechariah 5:9. Why would I not believe that if it's just as real as you are right now, just as real as the gold ball, the unicorn, or the Billy Ape? Or is it just something I've seen that you haven't?
No, the fact that we've seen it, even if I saw it, that still wouldn't be good enough. The fact is it's supernatural. Unless you're saying that this angel is made of material, is in the earth, and doesn't exist in a supernatural realm completely separate from humanity, and every part of this angel has an empirical basis, then no, you're supposing things that don't have an empirical basis, and they're unreasonable to believe based off experience.
But I saw a white robe, So it has a surface that I saw. It was white, has surface and color.
Apologize, let me
everything else
interrupt there.
in my reality. Sorry?
Let me interrupt. Apologies, let me interrupt. Does any part of it entail something that doesn't have an empirical basis? So is it supernatural?
It doesn't have to. To be real, it doesn't have, there's more than, it's possible that there's more things that are real than just empirical things. Like the thought of the number 2. I believe the mind is not physical. Whether or not that's true, if it was, well, that's a bad example. I don't want to go there right now. But if it's possible that there are other realms, then I don't, anyway, I forgot where I was going here. So so I don't have to have everything in an empirical basis. Now, I may not be able to prove it to you or anybody else in this reality, the physical reality, which is the fact. But nevertheless, I had an epistemological experience, which is at least going to change my mind. You're saying that that's not justified, and that's where I'm going. I'm saying, why is that not justified? Because that seems very justified. So it's just not available to anybody else. It's not scientific. I can't share the evidence.
Right. So there's 2 parts here. One is that my methodology. I am using the scientific methodology. So I would require testable predictions before it was justifiable for me to believe. Now, that isn't the only criteria. The problem here is that any experience you have, there are infinitely many ways to explain it. And you need some way to tell the difference between your experience and the infinitely many other ways. And if there is no way to tell the difference between the 2, then your belief is no more justified than any of those infinitely many other alternatives. You with me so far?
Yeah, but
what knocked over
the gold ball and the Billy Ape, and why can't I see something new?
No. I apologize. That's completely irrelevant to the point. So just stick with the cup here. If you see a cup fall over, there are infinitely many ways to explain how the cup fell over. Could be the wind, could be a squirrel, could be a bird,
demon,
could be psychic powers, could be anything. The first thing any epistemology ever has to do is it has to find some way to differentiate between all of these different possibilities. This applies to me, this applies to you, this applies to everything. You have to find some way to differentiate. Now, my choice to the thing I use is the empirical method. Now, this doesn't matter to you. You could choose a different method, you could use the empirical method or not, but you need some way to tell the difference between the 2. Now, I use the empirical method, so I'm going to require those testable predictions. You can completely reject that, that's fine, but you still need to provide some way to tell the difference between your experience and the infinitely many other imaginary things that could explain it. Now, that's irrelevant to empiricism. You don't have to, you can just reject empiricism, that's fine, but you still need to provide a way to tell the difference between your experience and the infinitely many other imaginary things.
Okay, yes, I think I agree with everything you're saying here. If I have an empirical experience of you right now, you're on a screen, but I believe, whatever, I see you on the screen. So I have an experience of you, let's just call it, or this pen. That experience is going to reduce to an epistemology, in my opinion. I'm going to call it an epistemological empirical experience or something like that. And it's going to tell me, it's going to make me evaluate in my consciousness its realness or not. What if I have an experience of this pen, like I do right now, and my epistemology tells me it has a positive in the check column of it being real. Now I have an experience of an angel over here, it's not even in this realm, it's just I see it here, somehow it's broken into this realm. Have the same epistemological, it feels just like the empirical, it feels just like the pen, epistemology is just like the pen. I put in a check column in the real column. Why can't I do that?
Because we know that's false. So like if you see an object, pick up I'm about to explain it. So if you pick up any object, like a water bottle, it seems to be like a solid object, but 99% of it is empty space between the electron and the proton. So our sense is that it's a solid object is false. Every time we looked at an optical illusion, we see it moving. We have that same epistemological experience.
You're straying way into theory land. That's false. Not empirical.
No.
You don't see the empty space. You told that it exists by your physics department, but you don't see it. You're
not following this. I'm going in a little different direction here. So if every time you see an optical illusion, it appears to you that there's something happening on the screen that's not happening. It's false. Your experience is false. And we can demonstrate experiences are false and are false consistently. If you touch a metal object and a plastic object, the metal object will feel colder even though they have the exact same temperature, which is room temperature. So everything around you. What?
Mm-hmm. The pen looks bent when I do this. Mm-hmm.
Yes, great. So your experience is faulty. We know experience fails, and it fails consistently, and it fails most of the time in most things. Like we think everything's solid, it's not solid. We see colors are illusory pretty much. We see optical illusions everywhere. our senses, our direct experience is not reliable. So we know that doesn't work. You can't just say, I have an experience, therefore it's justified. You need to go a step further than that. That methodology does not work.
Okay, agree. I mean, we're depending on a little bit of theory there, but I'm cool with that. I like all the quantum stuff and blah, blah, blah. But still, why does that tell me one epistemological experience is more or less real than the other when they both feel, and what feel is the wrong word, when they both have the epistemological set that they're have the identical realness? Because I don't think what you just said answered that.
So do you agree that it seems real that when we see an optical illusion that it seems to be really moving?
How do I know the angel's an optical illusion?
Well, you don't. That's the point. If you can't tell the difference between an optical illusion, which is false, and reality, which is not false, then you have no way to show that your explanation. What?
This pen is an optical illusion. There's no color, there's no solidity if quantum physics is right.
Right.
And I'll take the angel, which is a non-representational direct experience, which doesn't even rely on sensation. It's implanted right in my mind, apparently. That's more reliable information than the representationalist experience of my mind creating an inner map over the light entering my eye over this pen, which apparently is basically void. So on that note, the angel is more real. Theoretically, if we're going to go with the science route, the angel would be more real, according to my epistemology, if I started adding scientific theory into it.
So I'm not going that far. I'm just saying, so you agree that there are optical illusions and that what we perceive, our perceptions can be wrong. Right.
Mm-hmm. Watch the pen bend here.
So there's two possibilities here. One is we have this experience. This experience could be real or it could be an optical illusion. We have to have some way to tell the difference between the two. Otherwise, we don't know it's actually real because it could be an optical illusion. So we have to be able to filter out the optical illusion part, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So
well, I'm saying that's why I'm wondering how we just found out that the pen is not an illusion, which quantum physics might say it more is than isn't, and the angel is an optical illusion, when my epistemology says they're exactly equally real.
Right. So I use science. I say using the empirical method, if it can be empirically verified, we have filtered out the realm. Right. So I'm asking you, what is your methodology? How are you telling the difference between these two?
My epistemology.
Okay, and explain to me how that tells the difference between the two.
My epistemology is, I'm not sure I understand why there would be. They both have an equal epistemological realness, to speak off the cuff about it. So there wouldn't be a difference between the two. They're both real. This one I question more than the other one for scientific reasons. And you don't need science to know that this pen is mostly void. Just go back to the Greek atomists and the Roman atomists and so forth. And that'll tell you right there that this pen is mostly void. Whatever the angel's made of, I have no idea. Is it made of angel atoms or who knows? But I'm still not clear on why my epistemology is lying to me here. When I'm experiencing the pen, now I look this way, so to speak, and I experience the angel. Not even in this realm, both appear equally physical. One isn't because it's not in our universe. Whatever non-physical means, I'm not sure. Both give me the exact same epistemological stance, position, basis of being real.
I'm not sure why my argument isn't getting through here. So our experiences can be true, but they can be false. We don't know. So I'm not saying your angel is an illusion. I'm saying that if you have this experience, it could be true, it could be false. Now, if you don't have anything to tell the difference between the truth and the false kinds of experiences, then you have no way to know if this was a true experience or an illusion. So the first thing you have to do with an epistemology is say, well, here is my reason why I can tell the difference between the true thing and the illusion. So if you have an epistemology, then you would need to use that epistemology in some way to tell the difference between illusory experiences and reasonable experiences. Now, I have an epistemology, and I can do that with my epistemology. I use testable predictions. If it can meet the criteria of testable predictions, then I have filtered it out as an illusion. It's not an illusion, and now I have reason to believe it's true. So you have some epistemology, which isn't the same as mine, and you claim that you can use this epistemology to have some kind of a belief in a God based off of this experience, which means you have to have a way to filter that to show that isn't an illusion. Otherwise, it could just be an illusion. You have no way to tell the difference.
how is this to prove to me with that method that this is not an illusion? This pen.
I can empirically verify pins. Yes, that empirical method works fine.
I can empirically. Okay, you can empirically verify pens because we both agree that we share the experience.
Yes.
Okay. Why does that determine furthermore a thing's realness? What if there's something neither of us have seen, whether it's in a supernatural realm or natural realm? Why does that determine its realness? In other words, let me ask it a different way. If there's infinite universes, I'm a modal realist. I sort of believe in infinite universes. Or if you want to talk about infinite supernatural realms that we can't see, how does our ability to empirically perceive them determine their realness? Their repeatability empirically.
I'm still not following. I don't understand which part of my argument you're not getting here. So any experience we have to, it's possibly true and it's possibly an illusion. So we need some kind of a way to tell the difference. Is it true or is it an illusion? Now, the way I use is empiricism. This doesn't tell us everything. There is things that we don't know yet. There are things that we can't measure yet. That's absolutely true. There could absolutely be a supernatural. The question is that supernatural thing that we are imagining in our head, does that exist? Do we have reason to believe it's true, or do we have no reason to tell, or we can tell no difference between that thing and an imaginary thing? So again, we have any experience at all, two possibilities. One is that it's true. One is that it's an illusion. First thing any epistemology has to do is tell the difference. Is it true or is it an illusion? If it can't tell the difference, then we have no way to show it's not an illusion. I'm not saying it is an illusion. I'm just saying we have no way to show it's not an illusion. So we need some way.
How do I know the angel is that then? How do I know the angel? If you say by empirical reasons I know the angel is an illusion, then the first thing I'm going to say is, well, the angel is of a different category.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying okay. Again, so empirical is irrelevant here. Empirical is my viewpoint. It has nothing to do. I'm only asking about your viewpoint here. You have an experience. It could be illusory. It could be true. You have an epistemology. The job of the epistemology is to show that your belief is true and not an illusion. So you need to have some way to tell the difference between these two categories. I have a way to do it. Mine is empiricism, but that's totally irrelevant. Different topic completely. You need to have a way to do this for your epistemology. And I'm asking you, what is that way? How do you tell the difference?
Yeah. Okay. It would have, only thing it could be is shared experience. Like science is shared experience. We have the shared empirical experience. So in other words, if you'd either have to have the faith experience and I'd have to have the faith experience, the experience of the supernatural, experience of entities beyond, in the heavenly domains, whatever, that would be the only way then. There's a shared experience in that, just like science is shared experience. Or else the information is blocked from those who haven't shared in it. So in other words,
so let's say
the faith information could be just as real as the scientific. Just who's participated.
Well, shared, like there are things called shared delusions, communal reinforcement, mass hysteria. So there are people who share illusions.
This pen is a shared delusion.
Sure, yeah, great. So that doesn't work. Do you have a different kind of a way to do it?
Oh, wait a minute. No, okay, I was kidding around, but I mean, now that you say it doesn't work, is this pen a shared delusion? Because the quantum physicist is going to tell me it sure is, I think.
Right, yes, it is.
Because they can't explain how those little particles give me this experience. They can't even, there's a big divide there. Not that there's a problem with that.
Right. So the fact that you, Steve, and Kyle.
Delusion, then. Sorry.
Right. So the fact that all four of us see the illusion of the pin wobbling when you shake it does not mean the pin is wobbling. The fact that we have a shared experience of the pin wobbling does not therefore conclude the pin is actually wobbling. So if we all here on the show had a shared experience of an angel, that would not therefore then conclude the angel is real. So you need some other kind of methodology to show it's not illusory, other than the fact that we all experience it.
That's okay. So you're saying there's something more in science than just shared experience that verifies?
Yes, future testing predictions.
Okay. Which are just more shared experiences.
Yes, it is, but it's more precise shared experiences. They have a way of filtering out the illusory stuff. They work.
All right. But it's all reduced into shared experiences. I know a bunch of other people that have seen angels. Not in a book. I mean, people I know.
Right. And so the fact that we've seen them doesn't work. You need something more than that, because we can all see the illusion of the pin that you just held up, but that doesn't mean the pin is real. The pin is actually wobbling. So the fact that we have shared experiences doesn't work. You need something more than that. I have something more than that.
I think our shared experience of the pen, the black here, the cylindricality, I think all that's an illusory shared experience. I'm not kidding around here. I mean, I'm kind of thinking back to my quantum studies, and that's kind of what I think. I'm a meteorological nihilist. I published an article on it when I was teaching in the journal Axiomates, and the article was titled "Meteorological Nihilism and the Impossibility of Material Composition." And so when I say I think the pen is a shared illusion, I'm not just kidding around.
I'm agreeing with you. I'm agreeing with you 100%.
Yeah. Well, so I'm kind of taking it back. You're saying, how do we verify the angel's real? I'm saying you've got to experience it. That's it. But I'm saying the same thing about scientific things. And furthermore, people are wanting me, people in general are wanting me to prove the angel exists. I'm saying I can't, but I want to prove that this pen exists. And I'm thinking it doesn't, as we see it at least. There's maybe a blob of energy here that gives us some experience of this pen-like thing, but our experience, it's all in our head. 99% or something that's in our head. In our mind. Whatever that means. Mind.
I'm still not sure how. I'm not sure how to explain this more clearly. So
no, I'm kind of taking a different course here. I'm kind of throwing the same thing back on you. Okay, you want me to show evidence for the angel? I'm saying there is none. And I'm saying I'm reducing empiricism one step further to epistemology. Okay? I can have epistemological experiences that are not true of things that I epistemologically believe are real. That happens every day. Like the bending pen a second ago. But I believe in my epistemological set that you're real. And that's the primitive level. That's the bedrock. The angel I saw, same thing. Just happens to not be of the empirical domain, but that's okay because there's not just empirical things. Now I'm throwing it back and saying, why do I want to trust the empirical so much? Does it even exist in any way we think? Now, this isn't some controversial thing that's, you guys all know the quantum arguments and stuff. How much of our life is dream and how much of our life is real? It's almost as if, I can say I saw an angel, which I did. That's why I became a Christian. And that's controversial. But why is the pen saying it exists not controversial? Because that sounds more risky. It sounds like I'm talking about a non-existent thing. Or what? Wrong way to put it. I'm talking about an experience only. And I don't know what the energy is outside of me, if it even exists outside of me.
So the way the empirical method solves that is says it makes testable predictions. So we say if it's made of energy and it has particles and waves, the particles will have certain properties like particle duality, entanglement, certain kinds of spin and charm, or they're made of protons.
Those are very non-empirical terms right there. All that's fine. I like all that, but it's not. We're not talking about empirical reality.
All of that's
spin.
empirical. All that is
nobody knows what spin is.
All of that is empirical. All that is directly observable or indirectly.
You've seen an atom's spin, a quantum particle spin, because as far as I know, nobody knows what that even means. You have an angular momentum, you measure, but what is exactly spinning? Nobody has a clue.
So indirect observation is a form of observation, and they're both empirical. Sure. So you don't need to directly see it for it to be empirical. It can still be empirical as long as it makes predictions. Like you can say, if we collide these two things together, we'll get these numbers on a screen because it'll have this much mass, and we can predict them. That's a future prediction, and it is successful. So it's still empirical. So all those things are empirical.
Okay.
So that's how empirical solves the problem, is that we have empirical evidence of quantum mechanics.
I don't know if, when you start talking about things like spin, charge, superposition, entanglement, what in the world is entanglement? Talk about a mind, I don't know if what you just said, I don't even think we have an indirect empirical observation on that. We have something we're measuring. Well, okay, we don't need to go on this tangent. Actually, let me stop what I'm doing here. Okay, we'll go with that. I don't know if I agree with that, but fine. So back up. The quantum reality and my experience of this pen are an incredible divide that nobody can explain. Not that I don't think there's a problem there. It's just interesting. So why am I so controversial for my angel experience?
Because we can tell the difference between illusions and what exists, and we can use testable predictions to do it, and those things make testable predictions, so we have reason to believe they're not illusions.
So this pen is not an illusion?
Correct.
What is it? You
It's
think that there's
matter.
actually blackness and cylindricality and so forth?
No, it's matter and energy.
Okay, well, I see blackness, and I don't see, I mean, my interpretation of energy is solidity, but if I think about
Are we talking
quantum
about the actual
stuff,
existence of a pen, Jeff?
I've been trying to explain to him neurological nihilism because I talked to you weren't here last time, Kyle, when I had a discussion with Jeff and he was on, because I tend to neurological nihilism as well. So I get what he's saying, and I happen to kind of agree with him. But yeah, the pen doesn't necessarily exist.
It's a
just a
pen.
reorganization of atoms. Yeah, but what does that mean?
Why does everything
Yeah, I
have to
tend
be
to nihilism.
so
Yeah.
fucking difficult?
Sorry,
I think Tom does too.
Steve,
Tom,
could you explain the argument more clearly a little bit?
Yeah, neurological nihilist would basically say something along the lines of only primitives, which would be the atoms. So where you have a rearrangement of it, you don't have a real actuality there. For example, if I had a picture and it was just composed of dots, like a dot matrix, yes, it could form an image, but the image has no reality to it. It's just an illusion that we have because of the placement of the dots. So the neurological nihilist would say, okay, well, these things are illusionary in that regard, is that they have no real ontology. They're just a rearrangement of the primitives. Jeff, would that be
we see a flock of birds and we say flock, but really there's just 25 items that are disconnected.
So it's
then you also get into token type thing too. But what?
This is outrageous.
Yeah.
This is
so essentially it's the problem of the heap. You're saying you have a bunch of atoms as primitives and you add the atoms together and they're just more atoms. But the atoms still exist, right? So the atoms, they still have an ontological quality.
Yeah, those
of
are
the atoms.
Right.
And so those atoms can be empirically demonstrated with testable predictions. So we have an empirical basis for the atoms. We put the atoms in different combinations and label those combinations pin.
Sure. Yeah. Agree. Yeah.
But we don't have any
idea that only atoms exist. The partless atoms, not the atoms that scientists talk about, which they named because they thought they were the Greek atoms, but weren't. They found them spitting out electrons and stuff. So that's what neurological nihilism. Philosophical primitive atoms are all there is. In our minds,
Jeff,
who else are
it's a pen.
Real quick, spin is a property, by the way. It's a property of angular momentum, but they don't really think of it as a spin like the Earth spinning, right? It just happens to be, we can measure this property, whatever it is, and you're right, they really don't fully understand it, but we know something will have a spin and an orientation on a specific plane, and it can cause an effect, right? We can see something spin up, it'll go one way, we can see it spin down. We also see things will cause what's called fine line splitting on your spectrography. So we know that things do have this property, but what it actually is, whatever. I mean, strangeness, what the hell strangeness, right? These are just properties that it has. They're not really something that I think ontologically is the case. It's not like it's a spinning ball like that, no.
Well, the first
it is angular
don't
momentum.
know what this is the quantum physicists. I mean, they're measuring all this stuff. As far as what they were measuring, they're throwing their arms up as much as anyone else because that's a wise thing to do. You don't want to say what you don't know and make up a bunch of uncanalized theory. So, but anyways,
yeah, they're just saying we have these effects that we can see, and these effects fall into these two categories of spin up, spin down, and we can measure the consequences of if it has this category, it's going to do this, and if it has this category, it's going to go this different thing. So those are future testable predictions. All of that's empirical.
So you have stuff that we're going to grant you is indirectly empirical, fair. The quantum reality, which looks nothing like the reality I see right now. In fact, they look the opposite in many ways. So am I so outlandish to believe that, to claim that I've had a direct experience of an angel, whereas you want to say, no, that is not real, but the energy patterns I see out here, bookshelf, wall, that makes a lot of sense because of quantum reality, which basically says it doesn't exist. At least not as I say, it's all a dream. So I'm feeling more comfortable with the angel than I am the quantum reality. I'm existing into this physical domain.
So the quantum reality we can demonstrate exists with future testable predictions. And so we can show they're not illusory. Do you have some way to show the angel
I think
isn't
you're throwing me a
illusory?
red herring here. I got you on the predictions. I asked you earlier, why does the predictability of something therefore equal its realness? Because I can go pray 14 times and have an experience of the presence of God before the show's over. And so other people I know, and I can tell we can almost sense between each other, other Christians I'm with. I'm going to call that science of faith, but it just happens to be an experience of something not in the physical. So repeatability, I can claim I've got repeatability, you can claim and I can participate in your repeatability. But I'm saying a different topic. Why am I so outlandish for saying an angel exists that I've had direct experience of, but the quantum energy patterns, I'm supposed to believe in all that? Because I really don't believe what I see is real. I'm a meteorological nihilist.
So it's not just repeatability. You can repeatedly look at an optical illusion; it'll always look like it's moving. So the fact that you can repeat it isn't enough. It doesn't give us a way to demonstrate a difference between is it illusory or is it real. Science gives us a way to tell the difference, which is future testable predictions. Future testable predictions give us a reliable way to show it's not illusory and that it is real. Now, this doesn't show that your experience was illusory. That's not what I'm claiming. I'm claiming you had an experience. I'm glad you had an experience, and I am not making a stand either way. I'm not saying it's illusory. I'm not saying it's real. I'm saying you have to show to yourself, not to me. You have to show what reason you believe it's a real thing and not an illusory thing. Now, the fact that you have a repeatable experience and other people experience it, well, I can say, well, we can look at an optical illusion repeatedly many times, and it will always look like it's moving. So the fact that it's repeatable doesn't show it's not an illusion. And the fact that you have lots of people experiencing it, like all of us on the show can see the pin wobbling, that isn't enough to show it's not an illusion. So in order for you to be justified for yourself to believe that your experience of the angel was not an illusion, you need some kind of criteria to use to differentiate it from illusory experiences.
Okay, I see you. We're going back to the start of the show. I see you. My epistemology tells me you're real. Is that enough to claim that you're real?
No, just saying your epistemology doesn't tell you anything. You have to actually show how does your epistemology justify that conclusion. So just saying epistemology doesn't work. You have to actually...
I can't show pieces of my consciousness to you.
What do you think? What is epistemology?
Theory of knowledge. I know that you're real based on my experience right now.
So epistemology is
there's some faith there. I hope you're real. I hope you're not just a robot. I hope that blah blah blah.
Epistemology is how we know. It is like the methods by which we know. So you can't just say epistemology and then equate it to knowledge. You have to have some method there that you use to show it.
Is there not an army of philosophers and philosophy departments battling that out, and there's foundationalists and blah blah blah, and I think you're kind of explaining things as if we've gotten to the bottom of this, how we know things, because to my experience in philosophy, nobody has a clue. We have a lot of good theories that sound really good, but if you gave me one, I could just say I disregard that and I give you a different one, and nobody's going to be able to show one is right over the other.
Right, but they all agree on this one point, is that you need some kind of justification of something. You need some way to show the beliefs are preferable to not preferable, or true as opposed to illusory. They all agree on that, 100%. Every one of them, everywhere, always. So epistemology, you need some kind of a way to show that your beliefs are not illusory or real and not illusory. That's the way I'm explaining it.
So if I say to you, I experience you and have a consequent epistemology, which tells me you're real. Where am I lacking anything there?
Well, just saying you have an epistemology isn't enough. There actually has to be like steps in there in the epistemology that explain why.
Okay, what steps?
You just say epistemology. For me, it's novel testable predictions. You have to have a
you just
basis.
said a second ago, if we rewind, you just said a second ago, repeatability is not enough.
Right, future testable predictions.
Here.
Scientific basis, empirical basis, future testable predictions. That's the part that's
just
enough.
A second ago, you said that's not enough. I said, how is the repeatability of something?
The repeatability is not enough.
Right.
The future testable predictions are enough.
What is it enough for me to believe that you're real? To know that my experience is correct right now?
The future testable predictions of all the things that, like, of people and of chairs and of screens and of electricity and all of those things, those all have an empirical basis. So those give you a reason to believe that I'm real and on the other side of the screen and not an illusion, based on my epistemology.
Okay, so is it the testability or not? That's the factor here.
It's the future testable predictions, yes.
Okay, okay, now is the present. I had some experiences of you and I see you again. Okay.
Let me see if I can clarify.
The question I've asked before is, why does the repeatability of my experiencing
Future
you
testable
determine
predictions,
your
not
realness
repeatability.
because
Future
pen has
testable
bent them.
predictions.
Hang on. You
testable
guys are
prediction.
talking over each other. I know there's a little lag, but you got to wait for each other. It's just you guys are
Sorry.
like. "Bah, bah, 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 bah." So Jeff, go ahead. I have to go for a second. I'll be back in like 1 minute. Okay.
Sure.
Okay.
Well, I was kind of there. I don't think repeatability determines something's realness. I think that I think my epistemology is a primitive. That I am experiencing you, I believe by my experience you're not a dream, and that's the end of it. I can say I can look away and see you again, and therefore it's repeatable. But I don't think that repeatability. Therefore, if I say I have an argument, say I can repeatably experience Tom, therefore his realness is determined by that. I think that is not an inference.
Epistemology cannot be a primitive. It's impossible because epistemology has to have content to it.
I'm reducing epistemology to raw experience.
So again, I can prove that false because we have raw experiences of illusion. So we know that our experience isn't a primitive.
Like,
so it's automatically false. Right.
Like
so that
rules
rules out that as an option. So that rules that out as an option. You can't use that anymore. Now you have to tell the difference between is it illusion?
What is there? Because if you're going to say repeatability, I'm going to say you're going to use the illusory experiences over and over that you just said that I can't use.
No. Again, so
you're
stop using repeatability
over and over, then it's okay.
Stop using repeatability. Stop using repeatability. I do not say repeatability. I say future testable predictions. Those are different things. So repeatability is not the criterion I use.
How are they different?
Future testable predictions shows something in the future we don't know yet. Repeatability can show things we already know. Like I can repeatedly look at the screen.
I'm using repeatability because I'm trying not to go metaphysical and talk about predictions and future stuff. I'm trying to talk about what has been experienced now in the past, not something future. That's why I'm saying repeatable. Something that has been repeated rather than will be repeated. So it's a minor difference, but we're still talking about experiences happening over and over.
So again, future testable predictions, not repeatability, is the criterion that shows that one thing is not imaginary as opposed to being imaginary. That is my criterion. It doesn't matter if you agree with it or not. That's totally separate. You still need to provide some way to tell the difference between your belief and an illusion, which you have not done. You've just said you have an experience. The fact that you have an experience does not show it is not an illusory experience. You need to provide some way to show that your experience was not an illusory experience. It doesn't matter. All of my epistemology is completely irrelevant.
Why would my epistemology accomplish that?
Because if you can't, then you have no way to show or no reason to believe that your experience was not an illusion, because you can't tell the difference between your experience and illusion.
Okay, I think what you're saying is that I can see you over and over. Now I'm looking at the screen and back. Therefore, you're more real than an angel, which I saw repeatedly for 4 months. But that's no longer the case. Therefore, you're more real. I should trust the information now, which I've only seen you for an hour. I don't think I agree. I think that all epistemology reduces to, I think all philosophy, all science, all existence, as far as we know it, reduces to raw experience. And I don't, as soon as we add anything to that, we go into something more complicated, more that's built on raw experiential, our stream of experience. And so anyway, that's why I'm trying to say, why is this experience of the angel more or less real than this pen? And that's kind of where I want to go back.
This is something that you have to answer. You keep asking me to answer your question. You had an experience. It could be real. It could be illusory. You need to provide a way to tell the difference between the two. My answer is I've already said, I experience you now, and my epistemology tells me you're real. I had an experience of an angel. My epistemology then told me exactly the same way that it was real. The two are identical and tell me the realness of the object that's the referent of my experience. They're both, I have no way to determine one is more real than the other. I would be irrational if I made that move. Right, and your epistemology also tells you that all of the optical illusions you see are real. Which means your epistemology doesn't
I agree with you on that. I agree with you on that. Well,
right, so your epistemology does not, your epistemology does not give you a way to tell the difference between your illusions and what is real. And if it doesn't give you a way to tell the difference, you can't say that your experience was real and not an illusion because you have no reason to conclude one or the other.
Okay, we're going in circles. I'm going to ask you again, why does my raw epistemological experience not do that work?
Because your raw epistemological experience can see illusions, and it tells you the illusions are real when they're not.
Okay, but some of them will be illusions. Some of them will be real, perhaps, unless I'm dreaming everything, which, you know, who knows? But exclude that for the moment.
Sure.
Okay, so I'm wondering how we're determining which one. And it's not, if the repeatability is not the issue, how am I determining? I mean, I think this reduces all the feelings in a way. There's a thing called awareness. There's a thing called consciousness, which nobody knows how to define. And it has certain states and so forth, if feeling states, if you accept qualia states, whatever. And that's what this all reduces to, because I see you and I think you're real. I saw the angel, same way, real. And I don't, we can talk about how, you know, that I repeat it, or can I, whatever. I think that I'm good in this argument here, in my opinion. It's just that I saw it and you didn't.
You keep asking me the question that you're supposed to be answering.
Well, I think we're going in circles now.
Yeah,
honestly, Jeff has answered the question 3 times, to be honest with you, and I think it's a good answer. So I don't know what you're asking him for. If he literally has answered your question like 2 or 3 times.
He hasn't answered at all. Like, what are you talking about? What answer has he provided?
I totally disagree. He completely has answered your question. You're asking for justificatory conditions. He's giving you his reasoning by which he's justifying his belief by explaining the way he would process between having what he might have an illusion to be or to be real. Same thing we do all the time. You guys could be imaginary, right? You guys could be in my mind. I could be a solipsist and think I'm the only mind that exists. But I make inferences, right? I make judgments, and there's no evidence one way or another. You can't say whether or not external minds exist or not. Evidentially, it's irrational, right? But I make a judgment on that. He's saying that he's using the same processes by which he's judging that we exist or the pen exists or like that to justify that the angel exists. That's epistemology. What he's doing is rational justification in his mind. Now, whether we accept that or not as being the case, that's completely different. But it's dealing with his qualia, his subjective opinion on which he's formulating his beliefs. That is what epistemology is. What he's saying is not that bizarre. I mean, that's how he would rationalize his position, Jeff. I mean, Jeff, would you not agree that what you're doing is? I don't know what you're asking him then, because I literally has answered your question 3 times now.
I agree with everything you said.
No, he hasn't answered it at all. You have to give a way to tell the difference between illusions and
there's no way
what's real. He has no exactly.
But how do you do? But you can't even do that with reality. I can't even tell if you're real. I have no way to scientifically verify that. It's impossible. Any evidence?
Right. So I can.
No, it does not. Any evidence you have for the external minds. Any evidence that you have that demonstrates external minds exist is evidence to the contrary as well. Any evidence that reality exists independent of the mind is evidence that it doesn't exist independent of the mind. They're equal. That is the problem with irrational beliefs, is that they're not justifiable. They're not able to be rationalized for that very reason. That's why they're called properly basic beliefs. I think you're asking him to be impossible because your ontology your epistemology has the same problem that you're asking about him. You're asking him to do something that nobody can do. I'm sorry, it's just not possible.
My solution is pretty easy. I say there is a way to tell the difference. You can use empiricism. So my method, which there is a method there, can be used to differentiate the two. Now, whether or not you accept it as true or not is irrelevant.
Wrong.
He has not told me any way that he uses to differentiate. He says there is no way to tell a difference between illusions and reality, which means he has no reason to believe his experiences aren't illusions.
That's not quite what I said.
That's not what he said, by the way. Yeah, that's not what he said.
He said it word for word that there's no way to tell the difference multiple times.
In some cases,
how do we know
we're diving off into a place where we're talking about we can't prove that people are real and pins are real. That's just bizarre and stupid. Let's stay away from that.
No, it's not. That's philosophy. It's not bizarre and stupid at all.
It's stupid. It's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Okay,
then get a string theorist on here and tell him it's stupid.
I will,
because they're not going to say it's stupid. They're going to say it's a serious question.
It's bizarre and it's mental masturbation to try to talk about. You can't prove that people are real. We all know that people are real. We all know that pins are real. Pins are real. I have one in my hand.
I'm sorry, Gavin. You're just wrong on this.
We're supposed to talk about if God exists. This is dumb. This is dumb.
I agree.
Well, no, actually, I think
a good serious question.
It wasn't so much if God is real, but is he justified to believe it? Right? I don't think if you're not trying to argue. I mean, you said from the very beginning, you're not trying to argue that you can demonstrate God exists. You're arguing that it's rational to hold the position. You're arguing that you can be justified for it. I don't have a problem with your argument on that. I think you've done that.
No, but ultimately what I want to argue is the Bible is internally consistent, saying we walk by faith, not by sight. There is no philosophical, mathematical, scientific evidence anywhere for God. That's what we would expect to see. There's a different stream of information or evidence, whatever you want to call it, called faith or revelation. That's the only thing that'll reveal that God exists, and that's what the Bible says. And so all the debates we're having about atheism, theism that talk about can we prove God's all the apologetics that Christians are doing stuff is a waste of time. I mean, if you want to prove God, it's a waste of time. It's fun to do and debate and stuff, but it's not going to be on the same terms, the same universe of discourse that the Bible is on, which says that there's a different experience called faith, which is required, and there's nothing else. We walk by faith, not by sight. In other words, we walk by this other supernatural experience, not by science.
Dave, we're going to go ahead and open up the lines too, by the way, because we are at the hour-and-a-half mark, and we're going to have people call in and ask if they have any questions for you too, or you can begin calling. That number is 818. Oh man,
921.
I thought I had.
I can see it right there.
Yes, 921-3838. There we go. Oh, Dave, thank you for putting that on the screen.
Yeah, I mean, he's way ahead of us. Dave's got on the ball, man.
Almost like it's my job or something.
Yeah, I know, right? Hey, so real quick, so Jeff, would you say you're a theist or a rational theist, or do you just hold a theism?
Can you define that for me?
Better. Theism is just a position of faith. Rational theism. The theism is an irrational position. Theism admits that it's irrational, but we hold it anyways as a belief. The faith-based things. Rational theism holds that it's actually rational to hold a faith-based belief. And I mean, there are different types of epistemological.
The first one.
Okay, you're just a theist. Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
All
right, Dave. I think we have
Sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
Dave, I think we have a caller. Is that right? Maybe not. After we take a couple questions, guys, I'll read the super chats and then we'll let you make any last minute or final thoughts, closing statements, that sort of thing. We'll do that after we answer these questions. But
I have a caller, gentleman, and I've got to put him on hold real quick and bring him in.
Okay. What's his name or her name?
It's Frustrated Atheist.
Okay. Frustrated Atheist.
And he's frustrated. And he's still atheist, and he's frustrated. So.
Shannon, you can. Shannon, you can. You can call in anytime, Shannon. You know that.
Yeah, we'll dump a call to get Shannon on. We're just like, okay, bye bye. No, we wouldn't do that to somebody. Sorry, sorry, Shannon. We love you.
Dave? Is he ready, Dave?
Oh, give me 1 second.
Okay. The phones, the phone's ringing off the hook now. I think that's the 16th one in the past 3 minutes. So
it's a good show. You guys have I love this show. It's good. That's why.
Frustrated Atheist.
Yes. Hello.
All right, buddy.
What's your question or comment?
Frustrated?
Well, sorry, I hear myself. I actually am a philosophical atheist, meaning I believe that gods do not exist. And I'm actually against T-Jump here. I do believe that personal experience is a reason for a belief, because a belief in God is a personal thing, just like the belief in that no gods exist is a personal thing. So the only one you have to justify is yourself. That's the only one that needs to accept the reasons for your own belief. So are there reasons to believe in a God? Yes, there are. And personal experiences can fit that reason, because it only has to be a reason for you. And it doesn't matter. The whole entire question of are we going to try to get everyone to get to have the same personal belief is nonsense. It's not even part of this. You have to have a personal belief in this in this deity, because of the fact that this is a personal experience. So personal experience only has to justify you. So if he says that he had personal experiences, then yes, that is a reason for him to believe in his chosen deity.
Like it. Agree.
And Tom, what would be your objection to that?
You can have personal experience of optical illusion, so it's obviously false.
Well, then science is false.
Well, it doesn't.
Nope,
No,
science
the
can
thing
solve
is,
the optical
it doesn't matter about trying to convince everyone else. If you have, it doesn't matter the experience either. It can be, you saw your chosen deity, or you saw an angel, or whatever the experience is. Now, the only reason why I hold that the position of a philosophical atheist is because I have never had a personal experience. So, if I've had a personal experience, then I could further explain it. But since I haven't, I can't tell you what all would be a requirement for that personal experience. But that doesn't mean it's an illusion, and that doesn't mean that it's necessarily unjustified, which is what the whole entire thing is with this discussion, is that for it to be a reason, it has to be justified. And if it's justified to you, then that's perfectly acceptable.
Okay, Frustrated Atheist, we're going to click off from you because we've got several people calling in, but maybe we'll get with you and going deeper at some point. Okay, Dave.
Can I say one thing real quick? I mean, I'm not trying to be all sunshiny, but this is why I like discoursing with atheists. You get an honesty, which sadly, I don't find talking to 90% of Christians. So with atheists, you do get radical honesty, which is, anyway, so that's all I want to say. There's no agenda, there's less agenda, I'm saying, in the atheist camp. So go ahead. Sorry.
All right, Dave, who do we have now? This phone has not stopped ringing. They must
dude, I'm telling you, Shannon's sitting there right now. She's like literally leaving finger marks in her phone. I mean, it's got indentations on the screen.
Shannon, just give Shannon a vMix link, Dave. She's like family. She didn't have to call in. This was for people who like had a rather than trying to pull them out of the chat. I thought this would be more.
Now. She's on the phone.
Oh, okay,
now,
cool.
So give
okay,
1 second.
Hey, Shannon. He's piping her in now. Shannon.
Go ahead.
Can you hear Shannon? Don't hear Shannon.
Shannon, you should hear them.
Shannon, are you on a potato?
I'm on my cell phone.
There we go.
I'm on my cell phone.
There we go.
I'm pretty excited. Okay, good. I was getting really frustrated. So one of the reasons that I wanted to call through was because everybody's talking about perception, and perceptual cognition is my jam. So one of the things that I found as a flaw was that Tom kept saying that empiricism essentially validates cognition, which I understand because it's reinforcing to cognition. So you have an internal perception, and that internal perception is essentially your own. And until it has some sort of external validation, it has 1 point, and then essentially external validation gives it multiple points until it has enough points that you can essentially say, oh, okay, well, because I've accumulated enough external validation, I can reinforce the efficacy of what my internal experience is. However, the problem with that is that it becomes circular, because the only way that you can accept that reinforcement, the only way that you can accept that validation is, again, by internal perception. So that's where that argument becomes circular. So I think that is the ultimate issue that was trying to be conveyed and wasn't necessarily as well countered as it probably could have been. Because the best that you can say is that because I have perceptions that give me external validation for my perceptions, these perceptions are more likely to be true. Is that fair?
Are we again
I-
saying that the repeatability is determining the realness, or the future
Okay,
repeatability?
Okay, Jeff, I think that I might be more on your side than you maybe necessarily think here, even though I'm definitely an atheist. But I like arguments to be strong. And in order for an argument to be strong, you have to identify its weakness. And that is the weakness of this argument. The weakness of this argument is that in order to say and accomplish and acknowledge the fact that external validation and external empirical validation, specifically for Tom's argument, reinforces or gives more truth to internal perception, you have to understand and acknowledge the fact that the only way that you have to reinforce and acknowledge that external validation is, again, internal perception. So it becomes circular that way. So the best you can say is because of external validation, you have more proof that your internal perceptions are accurate than you would have otherwise having your internal perceptions alone without those external perceptual validations. Does that make sense, Tom?
Well, I just argue from William Alston's paper on epistemic circularity that you can have epistemic circularity and it's totally fine. You can still get knowledge claims out of it, so it's not really a problem for my model.
Why is that
Can you
not a problem for your
explain that?
model when you're talking about people's actual cognitive faculties? Like when you look at how the brain actually functions, which I think should be important for this argument to have efficacy, you're acknowledging the fact that that the only thing essentially that exists to any sort of individual is your internal perceptions, and that I would acknowledge and grant just completely at face value. However, if you're saying that because internal perception can be reinforced externally through empiricism, that validates them, I would agree with that as well. I would agree that it's external validation that those perceptions have efficacy. However, you fall into the trap of it being circular. Do you not see how that's circular? Because how do you validate that external perception and that empiricism has any efficacy without utilizing your internal perceptual cognition?
All claims to knowledge rest on one of three things: circular reasoning, infinite regress, or dogmatism. That's Agrippa's dilemma. There are certain kinds of circularity which are not a problem. You can have them and they're totally fine. So the fact that it's circular isn't a problem. As long as
Why
it's
isn't it a problem?
That's harder for me to explain. I'd have to reread Allison's paper and try to
Why would
summarize.
it be
Well,
dogmatism?
That's the crux of the
You said
weakness, I think,
dogmatism.
though, is because you can say it's not a problem, but until you can validate why it isn't a problem, then for anybody who's listening to your argument, it's still a problem. So for me, it's still a problem.
Most people
You
understand the difference.
You can, right? Like you can say, well, it's not a problem because there's three types of epistemic reasoning. That just means it's not a problem. But if you say, well, it just means
Yeah,
it's not a
they're all
problem.
problems somehow. Yeah, what it is, Shannon,
Yeah.
they're all problematic. But I mean, he's right. The Grupp dilemma, the Munchausen dilemma, eventually, for any logical system, is going to go down to three things: whether it's circularity, infinite regress, or brute fact. And that's just what it is. But that doesn't mean that that they don't have issues, right? Each one is an issue. Foundationalism suffers from an issue of brute fact, and coherentism suffers from circularity. These are still issues, right? You don't absolve yourself of the issues of it. It just means you have to accept at some point something, right? But circularity is still an issue. And by the way, I haven't read the paper he's talking about, but there's different types of circularity. There's rule circularity, there's premise circularity. Some are vicious, some are not vicious. So but it's still, I think that if you're using epistemology, your own epistemology to justify your epistemology, that is circular. That's premise circular, not rule circular.
Would you like me
And
to send you-
finally, before I go, sorry, Tom. I'm actually going to be on your side again for a minute there, Tom. So, because from a cognitive perspective, before I go, and let somebody else come in because I'm on here all the time. So, before I go, what I want to say is, from a cognitive perspective, what Tom's argument does have additional strengths, because essentially what Tom is saying is that you either have singularly your internal perception, or you have your internal perception that's additionally validated from external perceptions that you're incorporating into that internal perception. So if you have consistent and reinforced external perceptions that can be validated from external sources, So other people that you interact with, because undeniably you interact from a perceptual basis with other people in a differentiating value, like it's delineated from just like your internal thoughts, your dreams, like anything that you have, you can separate those cognitively. They're very, very different from an experiential standpoint. So what Tom is saying is that if you look at those as two unique forms of cognition, which they inarguably are, your internal thought processes and your internal dialogue and your dreams and things of that nature are definitely, from a perceptual standpoint, completely and undeniably differentiable from your external perceptions through your senses. So what he's saying is what you can validate through your senses externally by your interactions with other people and reviewing things logically gives you validation for perceptions. And if you don't have that external validation, those perceptions have less efficacy, and you shouldn't, from a cognitive standpoint, put the same type of value on solely internal cognition when it doesn't have that form of external validation. And what you seem to be saying, Jeff, is that even though it doesn't have external validation through my sensory perception and logic, it's the same. But the only reason that you're able to say it's the same is because you acknowledge the fact that there is internal perception and cognition. So I don't understand the grounds for which you wouldn't be able to delineate that just internal perceptions are different from your sensory perceptions, because if, in order for you to be able to do that, you would have to be able to say that your thoughts that happen in your mind where you speak to yourself are completely and exactly the same as your sensory perceptions, and that seems like a misnomer to me.
Well, the angel was, the presentation was exactly like an empirical experience. It was outside of me. I knew I was looking into another realm. And if you all think I'm wacko, I get it. No problem. I'm not going to try to defend myself against that. But it would be exactly like an empirical experience. Even that it had solidity and color, and so forth. It looked like a material thing. Blah 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 blah. It's just that I had I knew epistemologically that it was not. I knew it was of a heavenly domain. How just like I know that you all are here in the physical, I knew it was in the heavenly. And as far as the having things reinforced empirically, the experience was of such an epistemological status that it was, in my own set of experiences, I was able to put it as equal par to, say, an experience of the sky I've had every day for my entire life. I was able to put them as being exactly equal. And as far as I would have been non-rational to put one as more real than the other. Say the sky is more
Jeff,
real since Go ahead.
May I?
So let me ask about this, because I'm real curious. Okay, finish up, Shannon, because I really want to dive into Jeff's, because I might have an issue with some of the things he was just saying.
I do too, for just 1 second, and then I swear to God I'll go. I'm sorry. So, Jeff, what I'm hearing you say is that from a perceptual perspective, like the way that your senses interpreted and understood the experience, and the way that you internalized the experience was indistinguishable for you from any sort of other sensory perceptual experience. So you would, like, let's say, view something that's in front of you right now, like the pen that you were using as an example earlier, and it was just as tangible from a cognitive perspective when you view the angel from the experience of holding or viewing the pen, because like, it was that tangible to you. However, what Tom is saying that I think that should be taken into account is that could be very, 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 very real for you. It may, in fact, have been real. I wasn't there, so that I can't say that it was not. However, it's not evidentiary, because other perceptions, almost all other perceptions that we share, are shared perceptions in the way that we can validate them externally, and we can validate them with each other. That experience that you had, even though it may have had full efficacy for you and may have been an experience that was as real as any other cognitive perceptual experience that you ever had, has no means of external validation from a sensory perspective.
Agree.
In the way that almost all other experiences do have. And because of that, it is an evidentiary external of you. And because of that, it would follow that because it's not evidentiary external of you, and we don't have that form of perceptual consensus, that means that you cannot discount the fact that that was a perceptual experience that belonged only you, and that you're attributing it to something that it doesn't belong to.
Yeah, and I'm going to go one step further on that because of the privatization of your account. So Jeff, I think we're all going to just assume, argument that you had an experience. I don't think anybody's going to doubt you that you're a very honest and trustworthy person. I think so. To argue whether you had an experience or not, I think is meaningless, right? I think that you did have an experience. So let's grant that. But my question is, when you had that experience, what you found out about the experience, did you not find from what other people have told you what that experience might be, right? But how do they interpret that experience to have some kind of objective reality? I think was Tom's kind of argument. Now, granted, I've had similar experiences. I think a lot of us have experiences, things that we've seen in lucid states. But if you never heard of any of this stuff, right? If you were just some isolated person and you had this experience, right? What steps would you say that would lead you to a conclusion that it was some kind of angelic visit if you didn't know what an angel even was? I mean, did it tell you that was an angel? Did it and even if that case, you want to know what an angel is, but what did you use to validate it that it was what you are justifying it to be? By the way, and again, I'm the outlier here. I think that people can be justified to hold certain beliefs like this because they're very powerful. I mean, we have very powerful experiences, and whether that is persuasive to somebody else or not is not really the question. Is it convinced? Do we have enough information for ourselves to be convinced by it? I can see why these things can be convincing. They're very powerful experiences, but can you see that maybe it's kind of hard for somebody like even myself, because I think it's all internalized, to say that this was an experience. Like I've seen like things floating in the air, right? Demons in the air kind of thing. But I think they're all just lucid dreams. So how do you make that distinction between just like a lucid state and something that has actual ontology?
About my consciousness, the primitivity of my experience. This is what I was saying before. I believe you're real. Because of it, it's not that I made a choice. It just happened. You're here,
okay,
and it's automatically the case. I believe.
I got a question.
Hang on. Want to address one thing? Shannon asked a really good question. Just real quick. So the same was with the angel. That's really all I can do. So first person, purely experience, no scientific evidence available. Could be shared with others, according to my opinion, my claim. But again, I'm not asking you because it's not scientific, so I'm not asking you to believe that. Now, one thing Shannon said I wanted to say is when I look at you and have an epistemological experience of you, Tom, Steve, Kyle, and then of the angel, it wasn't exactly one-to-one. As I might have made it sound a second ago, you did know. Well, the epistemology involved that I was looking into a different realm, and also, I knew behind it, the power source behind it was Christ. That would just be in the epistemology. Now, another thing I should add to that, well, there's other things I could say, but let me just leave it at that right now. And Tom was going to say something, I think.
Oh, yeah, I wanted to ask, how do you tell the difference between what you're seeing on the screen right now and an illusion?
Isn't it impossible? Well, okay, let me think before I talk.
Well, I mean, I'm not asking
you could be an illusion. You could be an illusion. It's just, the only thing I have is that I believe you're real, because that's what my feelings, my consciousness says.
Are you still thinking about your answer, Jeff? You need a second?
Yeah. No,
Okay.
I'm good. It's just that
I wanted to say about Shannon, since Shannon just asked a question or just called in. Shannon will be joining later on in this month. Shannon will be with us a lot more. She will be coming on with me to talk to people who hold to conspiracy theories. Our first person is going to be Rand Campbell in a couple of weeks. So he has made a bunch of comments on the Flat Earth shows and said that the only way he would come on is if it was to talk to Shannon. So that will kick off our
I'm still convinced Rand is a Poe. I'm still convinced. He tells me otherwise, and I just don't believe him. I really honestly.
All right.
I think he's completely a
Go
Poe.
ahead. Could be.
Oh, yeah, to answer Steve, I don't have anything other than, again, I'm reducing everything to an epistemological state, which I don't choose. It just automatically happens in me. That when I look at the pen, even though quantum physics tells me what I'm seeing isn't real, I believe it's real. I look at you, believe you're real. Saw the angels, same. Just happened to be that that the epistemology involved, that I knew it was not of this. It looked like a physical domain, but I knew it wasn't this domain, this universe. That's really, now I know that's not gonna do it because we're talking about first person faith experience. I would say faith evidence,
Sure,
according to Hebrews 11:1, but it's non-scientific, so it's not gonna. I don't know how much further we can go.
No, I get what you're saying. I really do. Like I said, I've experienced certain things too, and it's impossible for me to be able to explain to somebody a first person account, right? It's privatized.
Yeah,
You just
right.
can't do it. Yeah.
Why did you choose, or was it not that you believed the experience, you had them, then decided, did you make a decision, or were they not convinced, or what made you not? I heard you talk about them a little bit on other shows.
Yeah, well, I'm a DOS-astic voluntarist like you, so I don't think we make our decisions on that. But when I'm having that experience, I would do not really testing, but I would. People say like, "Hey, say in the name of Jesus, go away," kind of thing. People have told me that before. Well, I tried that a few times, didn't do shit, right? So I'm like, okay, this is probably not some demon if it's not doing if it's not doing anything according to what they're saying it's supposed to do, right? And we know people can hallucinate. We know people can have things in the mind that cause these kind of states. And so that's something that is more likely to me to be the case because we know those conditions can occur. So if I had to go by preponderance of the evidence, which is more likely something that is internalized or something externalized, I'm going to lean on the internalized side, right? That's all.
Yeah, that's what I did the exact. I was a Buddha. I don't know if I brought this up before, but I was in my 20s, in my early 20s till about maybe around 32 or so. I was a very heavily practicing Zen Buddhist. And when I started teaching philosophy, I kind of just lost interest and just faded out. And then that turned into this whole Christian thing I'm doing now for all the reasons I've explained. But I had I really hit Buddhism hard. I was sort of depressed when I got out of high school. I didn't want to, everybody said, go be an engineer, go be a scientist. I didn't want to do all this. I want to be a philosopher. And everybody said, you won't get a job and my dad wouldn't pay for college, blah, blah, blah. So I kind of wanted to escape reality. And I just somehow bumped into Buddhism and I hit it like crazy, real hard. And I'm convinced I had nirvanic experiences, which anybody can access. It's very mechanical. Do A, B happens. And I know now I know that I think that Buddhism is a way, as an avenue to get to the Christian God. Because at the peak of my experiences, I was sitting. I worked at a place that was called RPS, but it was bought out by FedEx. It was just like UPS. And I worked there, and just because I wanted to have a job that facilitated Buddhist meditation, the loading boxes is perfect for doing Soto Zen meditation. And these experiences were in the peak of them. I remember sitting there at the end of the belt between trucks and thinking, what is this experience I'm having? It's like there's this light everywhere that's pure. It's very ecstatic, and it changed me dramatically. And it was like a realization came into my mind, this is the Christian God. And I remember saying to myself, this is November of 1995, and I was 25 years old. I remember saying, no, that's not possible because I'm an atheist. There is no Christian God. We all know Christianity is a complete joke, contradiction, blah, blah, blah. Can't be true. Mm-hmm. I went back and forth with this debate in my mind for about 3 days after having these experiences for about 3 weeks straight. And then they immediately vanished. And my life went into a tremendous period of self-destruction and depression and so forth until about age 30 and 5 years in there. And I would say it was demonic possession, all kinds of stuff was going on there. So what's the point of bringing all this up?
Oh man.
The point is that I did the same thing you did. I made the intellectual decision to reject what I saw. And now I think, now I would say I know that I let my intellectual thought override my direct experience, and that was incorrect. I'm saying, how do you know you didn't do the same thing, Steve?
So, okay. We need to jump to final thoughts or whatever. I guess, Jeff, was there anything that you needed to add on for a final thought? Because it sounded like you just summed up everything.
No,
a final thought.
I just want to say I love you guys' show. I watch it all the time.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's definitely demonic possessed. If anything's demonic possessed, we are.
Good.
Tom.
Thanks for having me on. I really enjoyed it. Yeah. Well, my essentially what I was asking is that Jeff has this experience, and I wanted to know why Jeff believes this experience is true as opposed to not true. Now, I wasn't asking for a solution to the problem of other minds or the problem of realism versus anti-realism. I just wanted a reason, just any reason. If it's just a feeling, he has a feeling that that's a reason. Now, of course, I don't think that would be sufficient, but essentially, the whole point of my distinction was there's some things we experience could be imaginary, some things could be real, and you need some reason to tell the difference. And I was just asking what Jeff's was. And apparently it's some kind of a feeling.
No, then that's all you have about this reality. You prove this pen is real, and you're going to ultimately get back to your raw conscious feelings and sensations, just like the
we can't
angel
go back.
was.
We're going back into we're going
Yeah,
back into the debate.
right.
Just relax. Oh, by the way, for Nira K13, 2 fucking pre-lined up callers, really non-sequitur show. Number 1, they weren't pre-lined up. Number 2, I said at the beginning of the show, this is something that we should do, and we just happened to manage to get it pulled off by the end of the show. So what you're insinuating is complete horseshit. Thank you. All right, now I'm going to read super chats. All right, Yuhan Roderick says, where is Nunbot? First, Nunbot is uploading her final round of scripts. I have updated the program to where you can now, or starting tomorrow, you'll be able to trade in your points for different things. That will start tomorrow with tomorrow's show. I got all of the things lined up. I tested it. Everything works out well. She just has to. I'm about at 62% now on her load up. So once she finishes up and all of those scripts will go through, she should be good to go, and you can start getting your stuff tomorrow. Cyrip says Tom's chair looks extremely comfortable. Also, hi Tom. You get a comment about your chair every show. You should maybe reach out to the chair company.
I'd fall asleep.
So Lazy Boy, actually, Lazy Boy Crandall recliner.
There you go. That's what I'm saying. You could get you a sponsorship deal. That'd be sweet. Jury Minko says, I am God. All you got to do is believe in me. Brian Stevens, I just did Jeff's test out loud. No God revealed. Pragmatic Culture says, sola scriptura is heresy, and it's Calvin who read the Bible wrong. Read church fathers and doctors, especially Saint Bellarmine, to see all the ways he went awry. Faith, reason, and God go hand in hand. 0132. The pen exists and is solid unless you want to define those words in stupid ways that make them fundamentally useless. Rhomboid Goat Cabin. I love that name. Jeff, put down the pen and show us an angel. Oh.
Can't do it. It's not scientific. No. It doesn't work that way. Not repeatable in the same way.
Akatsuki gang, this is for Kyle. We all feel your pain, buddy. Thank you. God's auditor, he's going full Charlie 10 Bruggenkate. Antonio Ariola says, the Non-Sequitur Show, can you read my PayPal comment when this show wraps up, please? Also, Kyle, I'm going to screen cap when I turned in and make it a gift from it. Antonio, can you put what the PayPal comment said? I might be able to pull it up, but just in case, copy and paste that in the chat and tag me in it so I can make sure that I see that. And then finally, Ofameo says, Jeff Grupp, show me the angels. They want to see this angel, Jeff.
Yeah, well, but here's the thing. That to me is a straw man. If Jeff's not claiming he can demonstrate an angel, then you can't ask him to demonstrate it, because that literally is what a straw man is. You're asking him to do something he's not claiming.
You're asking him to bring us the angel. When it's a non-scientific.
Jeff, you said you had that special prayer, right? At the beginning, you said you had some. Can you give that to us? Post it in the description or something. Oh, all right.
Yeah. Well, it was my wife. An angel. Yeah, I did that. 408 days later, I had my wife got in a car crash, which was sort of the culmination of the angel experience, which went on for 4 months. To make a long story.
Wasn't angels like the warriors of God? They were supposed to be like the ones that were just like the God soldiers. I mean, was this angel some kind of like scary monstrosity pouring out the wrath of God, or was it like some like
I have a picture of it. I painted a picture of it.
The westernized view of it from Touched by an Angel, you know?
One more chat, guys.
They all look like
it
was a warrior.
To Christianity. My experience was, what the fuck was that? A hallucination? Not OMFG Jesus. I guess it just depends on.
You said if it was a question.
Sure. It says it wasn't a question. It was a comment. It says that as a deist with similar experiences, I questioned Jeff's jump to Christianity. My experience was, what the fuck was that? A hallucination and not OMFG. I think so. Basically, what he's saying is, as a deist, since he's a deist, he's had similar experiences to you, but he acknowledges that he questions why that led you to specifically Christianity and why,
Good
not
question,
some.
actually.
It is a very good
is
question.
Yeah,
best question. And I already answered that earlier, though. The power behind part of the epistemology set was you had an awareness, like I have an awareness of certain things about you. I have an awareness that its power source was Christ. Don't know. I can't explain it for that first person stance.
Are you claiming like a sensus divitatis? Just
What do you mean by that?
some kind of that you have a nature that we all know of God, or in this case, Jesus was something that you just knew, and more of an internalized thing rather than something that we can experience externally. I mean, something that it's one of those things that we just have a sense that it's the case.
No, I mean, I'm not. It was when the angel was present. There was a terror, a fear to it. I mean, I was scared to death, and that part of in that was a presence that overshadowed the whole presentation of the angel, which was the presence of God, the Christian God, Christ. It was the cross, which.
But how do you know that? How do you know it was the Christian God?
Only
I don't think it's.
epistemological set.
I mean, are you claiming that as knowledge, or are you claiming that as belief?
I would claim it as knowledge, but first person. So
Really?
Okay. How do you know that?
Well, why?
Yeah,
Why is that?
that's a hard claim. Well, to have knowledge, you have to meet certain conditions, right? I mean,
I mean, it's non-representational information, I guess. I mean that could actually. I actually don't know that for sure.
Okay.
So I don't know. Maybe you're right. Maybe you're right. I don't know.
I think you might want to stick with a belief claim, because if you get into a knowledge claim, you're in a different ballpark. Yeah.
Yeah, that gives me. I haven't thought about it as much. I think.
Yeah, I want to thank both of you guys for coming on tonight.
Yeah.
Sorry earlier about the time frame. That was completely my fault. I wasn't paying attention when I read that email the first time. So I appreciate you guys being flexible and being able to adjust to me being stupid that day. And also thank you guys for watching. Of course, tomorrow when we fire Nonbot up, you'll be able to trade in your stuff for merchandise, super chats, shout outs, all that stuff. And we will be here at 3:30 tomorrow. It's not 8 o'clock. It will be 3:30 tomorrow with Jens, who is an architect, who is an archaeologist for Göbekli Tepe. I put all of my focus on how I'm going to pronounce Göbekli Tepe. So in my mind, I'm thinking about that word, and all the other words before it just kind of get.
It's hard to say, right?
It is. Yeah. Göbekli Tepe. Göbekli Tepe, which is the oldest site where it shows humankind starting to become communal instead of nomadic, where they're staying somewhere. They have rituals. They're carving places that they can stay and not have to travel. Hunting and gathering. So it's very interesting. We're going to talk about the implications and what it means for in terms of what we think we know about early humanity. I do not think that if I believed in the Sphinx at this point, since I don't believe the Sphinx anymore, we would be having a different conversation, because I would be asking about where were these smart civilizations, because they existed, which they still might have, but it won't be as conspiracy heavily minded tomorrow as it normally would have been.
Is it going to tell us about the stones? I mean, all the hoopla about the stones and all the misinformation on the stones, and people promoting it as, oh, it's impossible for this and this and that. And architecturally wise, it was plausible.
He's gonna he is one of the he's one of the actual people there excavating it. He had to get permission to actually come on the show from the people who are, I guess, running the excavation. So we're gonna have somebody there that actually knows inside and out the details of Göbekli Tepe. So it's gonna be really exciting. We are super honored to have him, and hope that you will join us. Remember, it's at 3:30 p.m. Eastern, not our usual 8 o'clock time frame. And Steve, anything else you want to announce before we say goodnight?
Yeah, tomorrow night, if you want to join us, we're going to have Ask a Philosopher again with Nick Suter and also special guest Ozzy on my channel. If you want to come check it out, probably around 7:30 or 8 o'clock Pacific time. And Jeff, you're more than welcome. Tom, anybody else can kind of come by. It's going to be kind of a closed at first, and people can call in, but eventually we'll open it up. But it was really huge last time, and I know that Nick really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it, so we're going to try something like that again with Ozzy this time too. So.
Excellent.
Central time.
Well, you can join Pacific.
7:30 to 8 Pacific. Yeah.
Okay, unapologetically atheist. A last minute super chat for the win says, "Is he saying that the skeleton hands I saw coming out of my bed to grab me as a child were as real as a pin? How is this not an insane premise?" Well, there's. I think that is what you're saying, isn't it, Jeff? But we don't have a lot of time to go into it. But
It depends on his
essentially
epistemology.
that is what. Yeah, essentially that is what he's saying. So hope when you go to bed tonight, ladies and gentlemen, that there are no skeleton hands coming out of the bed to grab you. Remember, pins are real, and we love you. Good night.